Namaskaram to all and welcome to this session on the 3.5 Shakti Peethas of Maharashtra. To take us through this session, we have with us scholar Dr. Mrinalini Nevalkar. Dr. Mrinalini Nevalkar is a visiting faculty of Vedas, Vyakarana and Puranas at the University of Mumbai. She is a postgraduate in Veda and Vyakarana. Her MPhil work was on Narasimha through the Puranic sources, and her doctoral thesis was on Sacred and Folk Reams of Bhairava, a study into mythology, theology and ritual. She has received many awards, notable among them being the prestigious Zala Vedanta Award and the Justice A.T. Telang Junior Research Fellowship in Indology. She has teaching and research experience of nearly a decade and takes online workshops on subjects like classical and modern Sanskrit literature, grammar, Puranas, Vedic grammar, etc. So I welcome Dr. Mrinalini Nevalkar and ask her to take over the stage and take us through this journey of the 3.5 Shakti Peethas of Maharashtra.
Namaste everyone. We have recently concluded the celebration of Shakti, Sharadiya Navratri. At Subhu's Corner, we have been celebrating Shakti throughout the month of October. As a part of this celebration, myself, Dr. Mrinalini Nevalkar, will be taking you on a journey across Maharashtra to know more about the 3.5 Shakti Peethas. Let us first understand what is Shakti Peeth and how did they come into being. Shakti Peeth means the abode or seat of Shakti. Shakti is the supreme deity for the Shaktas. She is considered as the mother of the universe and is responsible for creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe. She is solely responsible for both avidya and moksha. The word Shakti is derived from the Sanskrit root shaka, to be able to. So Shakti is the supreme ability. Shakti Peethas are designated seats for Shakti. The Puranas narrate the story of creation of Shakti Peethas in great details. Let us understand the story briefly. Many Puranas give us different versions of how Shakti Peethas came into being, and they highlight different aspects of this narrative. Let us take a combined overview. There was a certain enmity between Shiva and Daksha, though Daksha's daughter Sati was married to Shiva. As per some Puranas, it was due to a previous pact between Shiva and Brahma. Brahma was Daksha's father. According to some Puranas, it is because Shiva insulted Daksha during his consecration as Prajapati. Some also claim that Daksha preferred Vishnu over Shiva as the husband for Sati, so the enmity continued. But Puranas generally agree that they were enemies. Hence, when Daksha organized a huge sacrifice called Brihaspati Sava or Sarva Jivana, there are 2-3 different names that we get. He did not invite the Kapaladhari Shiva and his wife Sati for the sacrifice, nor was any part of the sacrifice dedicated to Shiva. So he got no share of the sacrifice either. When Sati was informed of the sacrifice, she decided to visit uninvited. She thought, it's my own father's, my own house. Why can't I go? Why do I need an invitation? So she decided to go there. Shiva initially tried to stop her, that you should not go to a place uninvited. But ultimately he gave in and Sati went to her father's place. When Sati reached the Yajna Bhumi, she realized that Daksha was not even offering any oblation to Shiva, nor was giving him any share in the sacrifice. So when she asked him, Daksha ended up insulting both of them, that they are Kapali, they are inauspicious. Sati couldn't handle this rejection and couldn't handle the insult of herself and her husband. She decided to immolate herself after duly reprimanding Daksha about his mistakes, that he was ignoring a great god indeed. So, when Shiva got to know of Sati's immolation and this unfortunate, unnatural death of his beloved wife, he became furious. He arrived on the scene and created the ferocious and powerful Gana called Veerabhadra and ordered him to completely destroy the sacrifice. and also punish the silent observers who were part of the sacrifice, all the gods. So Virabhadra did exactly as he was told and destroyed the complete sacrifice. He won over Vishnu, the protector of the sacrifice. Also, if we remember, there was a certain choice that Daksha had over Vishnu, Vishnu over Shiva. So he won over Vishnu as well. He beheaded Daksha, the Puranas say, and offered his head as in the sacrifice as an offering. Later, Virabhadra eulogized Shiva because, in the words of Shiva Puran, and I am quoting, Rudre Rushte Katham Loke Sukham Bhavati Suprabho. How can the world be happy if Shiva is unhappy and angry? Shiva then brings back things to normal. Daksha is also reborn. The sacrifice is completed, and Shiva also gets a share in the sacrifice. However, the story doesn't end here. It says Shiva was not able to digest the immolation and the death of Sati. He lamented bitterly. He had lost his beloved wife. So he wandered around the world carrying her dead body, her corpse, on his shoulders and lamenting. So gods prayed, all the gods, when they saw this scene, they realized this is not going to be for the good of the universe. So what they did was they prayed to Shani, Shanaishchara, the planet that we know, Shani, God Shani. And so he agreed to help Brahma, Vishnu, and Shani, all three of them, then with their Yogamaya entered the corpse of Sati and cut the body into several pieces, and these pieces scattered all across the earth. And these are the places where Shakti Pithas have come into being. Shiva is said to have appointed different Bhairavas, many different Bhairavas, as guardians of these Shakti Pithas. Now, if we see the number of Shakti Pithas or their locations, or which organ fell where, or which is the Shakti, which is the Bhairava, we get many different lists for this in different Puranas. The number also keeps changing from as small as 4 Shakti Pithas to 7 to 10, some say 18, some say 42, some say 51. And the longest list that we get is of 108 Shakti Pithas, 108. So these places, because Sati's organs have fallen in these places, they have a completely divine origin. They are considered to be extremely sacred pilgrim sites. Now, out of these Shakti Pithas from 4 to 108, we say there are 3.5 Shakti Pithas in Maharashtra, 3 full Shakti Pithas and 1 half Shakti Pitha. They are in local language called as Sade Teen Shakti Pith or Out Shakti Pith. They are Mahalakshmi at Kolhapur, Tulza Bhavani at Tulzapur, Renuka at Mahur, and Saptashrungi at Vani. The first three, that is Mahalakshmi, Tulsa Bhavani, and Renuka, are considered to be full Shakti Pithas, while Saptashrungi is a half Shakti Pith. The first three are supposed to be symbolic of Akara, Ukara, and Makara in the Om. They symbolize Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti, and Kriya Shakti of the Supreme. These characteristics of the three complete Shakti Pithas have said to combine in the fourth, the half Shakti Pith. As per many, it is considered to be a half Shakti Pith because she is an unmarried Kumari Devata without a consort. So, half Shakti Pith, she is not complete. It is also occasionally replaced with another big place, big pilgrim center of Shakti called Jogeshwari or Yogeshwari at Ambezogai. She is also unmarried. Ambezoga is also unmarried, and it's also then eligible as a half Shakti Peeth. Many believe that though both these places are considered half Shakti Peeth or Ardha Peeth, they are Swayambhu Devata. They are not created Vigrahas, they are Swayambhu, and hence are more sacred or more powerful. Now let us know about all these deities and these Shakti Peethas one by one. Let us start with Mahalakshmi of Kolhapur. It is located in the Kolhapur district of Maharashtra. Karavira Mahatmya, a Sthala Mahatmya Puran of Kolhapur, narrates the story or Katha of Mahalakshmi. Let us understand that in brief. There used to be a demon called Kolasura who had received the boon of dying only at the hands of a female. So he created havoc in the universe, the three worlds, and was invincible for Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, all three of them. Ultimately, it was Mahalakshmi who fought with him with the help of her sisters Katyayani and Triambuli, and also with her brother or her friend Jyotiba of the neighboring Ratnadurga. The demon requested that the place where he died be known by his name and Mahalakshmi be settled there. Mahalakshmi, being the mother she is, obviously granted his last wish, and the place came to be known as Kolhapura. And Kolasura Mardini Mahalakshmi now resides here in all her glory. Today, the temple that we see is from 7th or 8th century of Common Era and is supposed to be based on the Sri Yantra or the Sarvatobhadra Mandala model. It's said that the three eyes or three netras of Sati have fallen here. The Shakti here, as per the Puranas, is called Mahishamardini, and the guardian Bhairava is Krodhisha. It is situated near the river Panchaganga, highlighting its supremacy over Kashi, situated on Ganga, one Ganga versus Panchaganga. The Mahatmya states, Varanasyathikam kshetram Karaveerapuram mahat Bhukti Mukti Pradam Drunam Varanasyaha Yavadhikam. It is Yavadhika in comparison with Varanasi. Today, it is also referred to as Dakshina Kashi and has many other temples like Vishwanatha and Tirthas like Manikarnika to complete the duplication. The image of Ambabai, Mother Mahalakshmi, is over 3 feet tall. It's a Chaturbhuja image holding a fruit called Matulunga or Mahalunga, a mace, a shield, and a pot called Panapatra. It has a mukut with Nagafana, Linga, and Yoni therein. A lion stands just behind her. It's a black stone idol. Vajralepa was performed in the middle of the 20th century, so very recently. There are separate but linked Garbhagruhas for Mahakali and Mahasaraswati within the same temple complex. There are many other smaller temples like for deities like Shani, Ganesha, Katyayani, Bhairava, etc. In fact, around the temple, around the main temple, we have smaller shrines for many deities, gods and goddesses. Temple is decorated with beautiful sculptures of dancers, musicians, nymphs, that is apsaras, and many decorative designs. The ritual worship in the Mahalakshmi temple of Kolhapur begin with Kakad Aarti at the early dawn, followed by Shodashopachar and Panchopachar pujas during the day. Shezarati is the last ritual during the day, and it helps Arti is sung so that Devi sleeps better. So it is used to put Devi to sleep. That is the last ritual. Uh, other regular rituals include palki processions that happen every Friday in the evening. Rathotsava is a very spectacular ritual that happens. It happens on Chaitri Purnima with Utsav Murti In Navratri also, Lalita Panchami Day, Devi visits her sister Trambuli, or Temblai as she is locally known. That is also a very beautiful procession. There is Nagar Pradakshina that happens on Dashera, which just happened yesterday. Uh, Devi, another very beautiful ritual that takes place here is the Kiranotsava. It is really unique to Kolhapur. It happens twice a year in the months of Kartika and Magha, so that collide usually between 9th, 10th, 11th November and 31st Jan to 2nd of Feb. What happens is through the temple entrance, sun rays enter the temple and illuminate Devi step by step. So on first day they come till her knees, then till her chest, then the entire murti, the entire face of Devi is also illuminated. And it is an experience of a lifetime. We get videos, we get pictures, but experiencing it in person is something which is really an experience of a lifetime. Deepotsava is also held of 15 days. It is from Diwali day onwards. Though her name, Mahalakshmi, hints at her Vaishnava character, and she is said to be Venkatesh's wife, we say she is Haripriya. She receives regular saris and gifts from Tirupati Devasthanam. But at the same time, her imagery with the lion, with the Naga or the Linga Yoni below her crown, Mukuta, they hint at her Shaivatva. However, this uncertainty of who her consort is, who is the male god associated with her, does not affect her piety or her greatness in any way. Rather, it adds to it. And as they say, with reference to mother goddesses all across the world, the male god or the consort who is associated with her in various roles, probably as her father, as her brother, as her husband, as her son, as a protector, as an attendant. So the male power is associated with the female in many ways. It hardly matters. So that is about Mahalakshmi. And now let us understand a little more about the Kuladevata, Kulaswamini of entire Maharashtra called Tulza Bhavani, who is located in the Usmanabad district of Maharashtra in Tulzapur. It is closer to Solapur, reachable from Solapur. The temple is located on the Balaghat hills. So she's considered to be, like I said, Kulaswamini of Maharashtra. The most famous story about Tulza Bhavani that we know in Maharashtra, which is very famous, is that she appeared in front of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, or some say in his dreams, and she gifted him a sword called Bhavani, or she blessed him with that sword called Bhavani, who in his efforts to establish the own Maratha kingdom. Tulsa Bhavani is also known as Twaraja or Turaza or Twarita Bhavani on the basis of the Puranic tale associated with her origin. Uh, the Mahatmya tells us that there used to be a sage called Kardama who resided here during the Kruta Yuga period. And he had a beautiful wife called Anubhuti. What had happened was she had a young son with Kardama, but after the son's birth, Kardama unexpectedly expired. He died. So after his death, because she had a young baby, she couldn't offer herself, she couldn't do Anugamana or Sati, and she decided to perform severe penance. So while she was penancing, due to the merit of the penance, she started looking very beautiful. She started looking radiant. And this beauty attracted a demon called Kukura to her. She tried to woo her, he tried to woo her, fancy her, and she was alarmed with his advances, and she decided to pray to goddess the Adi Shakti, the mother goddess, the primary goddess, for protection. When she prayed to Adi Shakti, to Mata, the goddess appeared right away, assuming the form of Ashtabhuja Bhavani, that is, eight-handed Parvati, and immediately killed the demon and protected her. Anubhuti bowed down to her, to this Ashtabhuja Narayani, and requested her to stay at that very place and protect others in the generations to come. She became she came to be known as Twaraja or Turaja because she came to Anubhuti's rescue immediately. Twara or Tura in Sanskrit is hurry, when you do something very quickly. Satvara, hence the name Twarita or Turaja. She is also called Rama Varadaini or Tukai or also Yedai. These are different names associated with the goddess. And the story regarding these names is very interesting, very different, unique. What had happened was, after the abduction of Sita in the Ramayana, when they were in the Vanavasa, after Sita's abduction, Ram and Lakshman were looking for Sita all around the Dandakaranya. And they were wandering around, and Ram was lamenting, crying profusely. He was looking for Sita. He would ask every animal, every bird, every tree, every bush, every rock he would find as to, did you see my wife? Did you see my beautiful Sita anywhere? And this went on, and Shiva and Parvati were looking at this entire scene unfold in front of them from the Mount Kailas. So when Parvati saw Ram lamenting like a normal human being and crying and making a scene, she says to Shiva, you say he's a god, but his actions are not befitting a god. It is not how gods react. He knows that all this is not real, but Ram doesn't seem to realize that and is making such a scene. Why do you have to pray to such a person? He's just another human. Why do you do that? So Shiva tried to reason with her that he's behaving like this because he's in a human form. So he has taken an avatar as a human, so he has to behave like a human does. But Parvati couldn't accept this, and she said, I know he's just a human being and I can trick him very easily. So what she does is she assumes the form of Sita. She dresses up just like Sita, and she goes to Ram. She comes in front of Ram, appears there, and runs to him as if to hug him, saying, Nath, I'm here. So when she comes closer to Ram, and as she is about to hug him, Ram holds her. He bows down. Ram bows down, touches her feet, obviously recognizing Parvati. He touches her feet and asks her, "तू का आई अशी वेगळी झालीस? Oh mother, why did you assume such a form? Are you angry with me? Did I do something wrong? So why are you not blessing me? Why are you in such a different form?" The moment he says that, Parvati realizes that Ram has recognized her and is actually a divine being, not a human. He is just creating that facade to be true to his human nature. And she blesses him. She realizes the divinity and blesses him. She says, she asks Rama to venture south to locate Sita. So, and she also promises him that she will wait right there till he comes back with Sita. And there is a giant boulder near Turzapur, which is called Ghat Shra in local language. And it is said that this is where Parvati waits for Ram. So she is also called Tukai because Ram called her Tukai. Or when Ram told her, "Are you mad? Have you lost it? Vedi ahes ka?" Which is what has given her the name Yedai or Vedai. She blesses him, hence the name Rama Varadaini. The one who blesses Ram is Rama Varadaini. Today, the temple is from about 12th century. It is not as old as Mahalakshmi temple. The current temple is from about 12th century. It finds references in Skanda Puran also. The image of Tulsa Bhavani that we have here, like in the story, resembles that of Mahishasuramardini. It's also made up of black stone about 3 feet tall. She also, like Mahalakshmi, has linga and yoni below her crown and holds many weapons in her hands: trident, dagger, arrow, discus, conch, bow, Panapatra, and also in her one fist she is holding the hair of Mahishasura, with which she is holding him. A quiver is also there on her back. Her left foot is set properly on the ground, and her right foot is on the body of Mahishasura. Her mount, a lion, is also behind her, like in case of Mahalakshmi. She is adorned with many beautiful ornaments, and there is also inverted image of Penancing Anubhuti, the wife of the sage for whom she appeared here. There is also an image of Markandeya in the vicinity. Images of animals, birds, semi-divine beings like Yaksha, Kinnara, Gandharva, etc. are carved on the outer and inner walls of the temple. There are many tirthas around like Papanashi Tirtha, Gomukha Tirtha, Kashi Kunda, Ramakunda, Chandra Surya Kunda. There are many sacred places around. The ritual worship at Tulsa Bhavani temple also begins at early dawn, but the ritual is different. There is drumming, Saughada Vadana. Charana Tirtha Puja happens after that. A very simple offering of bhaji bhakri, that is vegetable and a thick flatbread, is offered. Sweets are also offered to her. The bathing ritual of the goddess Abhisheka or the Aarti rituals are repeated thrice during the day. On Khande Navami and Vijaya Dashmi, the 2 days, Ajabali is offered, a goat sacrifice to her. She is the family deity for many of the Maratha families in Maharashtra. People from all the caste groups, the various caste groups, frequent the sacred site. An unusual ritual called Nidra is performed at Toza Bhavani temple thrice a year. So the goddess is said to rest, lie down and rest on her beautiful silver bed, and it's said to be rejuvenated to look after her devotees again. The total period of this Nidra is about 20 days, 19 to 21 days. Moha Nidra, the first, happens in the month of Ashwina. Gora Nidra is in the month of Bhadrapada, and Maya Nidra happens in the month of Pausha. She then rests on her special bed, which is a very unusual feature in a Shakti temple. Another unusual fact is that the Vigraha, the idol, the image of Tulsa Bhavani, is a Chala Vigraha. That is, the original idol that is worshipped, the original Vigraha that is worshipped in the temple, is itself taken on the Palki processions or the Ratha processions, and no separate Utsav Murti is used, like in case of Mahalakshmi. Navas, what we can understand as Mannat, where you request the god for something, obviously in exchange of something. And Navasapurti are very common rituals, in very common features in the Tulsa Bhavani temple. We always find somebody or the other completing some Navas. People also undertake harsh, painful activities to show their complete surrender to goddess. And there also are many Bhairav shrines in the temple vicinity. Many sacred mathas are also engaged in her worship. And it's a very pious and a very, very, very popular Shakti Pit. There always is a lot of crowd in Tulsa Bhavani temple.